on most utilities here in the Philippines. On the issue of the revenues is always there. You can book revenues because people are using water. And after 3 months, we're able to send out bills. But the problem is the ability of the people really to pay the water bills. Also, in terms of our revenue, it's really impacted because of the slowdown in economic activities. As you know, here in the Philippines, our tariff system has classes of customers, and basically the industrial commercial customers, which consists about 20% of our water service connection, is really brings back a large volume of revenue. So in that regard, the customer mix impacted our revenue. And also the lockdown, the ability of the people to pay, because most don't have jobs. And then later on, the government required the utilities to allow the customers to pay on a staggered basis. So those are the really impact. But to mitigate those, really went all out to educate our customers on the importance of slowly settling their bills so that it will not accumulate. And then we open other channels of payment, mode of payment, so that it will be accessible to them even while they are at home. I hope that answers the question. Yeah. In terms of mobility, in terms of borders, we have people, we have employees who live outside Metro Manila. And there was a time that Metro Manila was locked down from other cities. So it's a good thing that we have redundancies in terms of skill sets of our people, so that although running some of the plants were not their major responsibilities, but we trained enough people to do multiple taskings. And then slowly we're able to bring them over with the help of our government relation team, so that they be allowed to enter Metro Manila, and then we were able to house them in our facilities. So that's how we handle the restrictions in terms of borders.
Excellent, thanks, Roel. I might just keep this moving. I'm happy to stay and chat about this all afternoon, but what I might do is just have a talk to the template, just go through some of these items on the template in case people want to get away. Yeah, the template also talks about response and recovery, which are other key things to think about in a COVID plan. But it also draws you then to resourcing of the plan. So how would you actually resource it? And it's got here for the different stages as well of the plan. As we talked about before, for a lot of these things, the plan has to be escalated, and most governments, and you see it happening around the world, there's different levels of response to COVID. So we've talked about the pre-planning. So what are the things that we can do before it hits? And then as COVID might hit your country, what are the things that you need to actually put in place then? And as the COVID gets more serious, there's probably an escalation of the measures that you'll need to take. We probably won't go through all of these in detail. You can see here, if you're putting a COVID plan together, what are the different scenarios there? So in this case, in the soil and water case, I said, well, no positive cases. Positive cases are likely, and there is a positive case. So in their context, in their situation, probably that's the way they'll handle it. And stage 4 here is if there's an emergency with positive cases and a shutdown of 21 days. So if you're preparing your plan from using this as a template, you really need to think, well, what happens in your country? What are the different stages? And then what are the different actions that you put in place? Different stages here. So that communication comes up. Vulnerable staff is another consideration. That's come up in a few places. We were working with one of the teams in the islands there, and everyone, I think it was over the age of 50, weren't allowed to work on sewer systems. So You really need to take your government guidance on who are your vulnerable staff and how can you manage that risk to them. Your backup staff in key positions. And what are you going to do to manage isolation within your building? If you've still got people coming in, how can you have some sort of segregation? One of the issues that came up here pretty quickly was liaising with police to make sure that if you're getting into a shutdown situation, how can you make sure that your team can still get out to make sure those processes are in place? A lot of businesses now have got sort of screening in your counter areas, so you might need to give that some consideration. And here we are about purchasing, supplies, restocking, and those sort of things need to be considered up front. So this plan's good. It gives you a bit of guidance. Look, it mightn't suit your context specifically, but it's certainly there to be modified, and it will give you some good guidance. And as you can see here, in Solomon Waters' case, where they go to the next stage, so the stage 2, they bring in some other elements there. So maybe the vulnerable staff, in the first stage you've identified them, but then maybe the vulnerable staff might need to go on leave or put some other arrangements in place. You might need to think, if you've got sites, particularly on islands where you've got a distributed sort of system, you might need to think about moving some of your staff to other islands up front in case there are travel restrictions, things get shut down with some of your sites. Some of the islands talked about bringing their staff in at some stage so they're segregated from the wider population and basically live in a bubble. If you've got hotels that aren't utilised, you might be able to do that. So there's some of the things you could do. Maybe closer engagement with police and other essential services in the whole of government, crisis response, security. And if you're going to bring people in and maybe have people at offices and things, make sure you've got a right, how can you accommodate them? Are there bedding? Are there places for people to sleep? Have you got food? Particularly if you're sending them out to remote sites, you need to think about those logistics. And keeping an eye on your critical supplies. Short-term lockdowns bring their own set of challenges. So you might have to actually go and pick staff up if people aren't allowed to drive around. And here the Solomon Water team have suggested they will check the temperature of people before they pick them up and bring them into an office or a work environment. How would you roster and rotate staff? We've talked about some situations where the teams might be split up, so you might need to think about that at some stage of your response planning. Put your whole team in a bubble, split your team into red and blue, or other ways to do it. So there's a few ways to tackle that consideration. Barry responded to me this morning on the template and reminded me that you might need to think not only about moving people between islands and the like, but what about critical spare parts and some of those logistic things? So if you can't take people between islands, you might be able to get critical spares, chemicals, chlorine, and things.
Okay, it's another Zoom, back-to-back Zooms.
Oh, sorry. Okay. And then the template, now what if there are ongoing shutdowns? Again, it brings their own unique set of challenges as it goes through. How you manage vehicles and things, so disinfection of offices, disinfection of vehicles. So other considerations. So this plan's pretty comprehensive. We could sit down and talk about each of those things in a lot of detail. And potentially they need to have their own plan that sits under each one of those. But I think it's important to show that the plan, it's got phases, how it will be implemented. The situation changes, different things need to be done, and it draws out what are the actions, who's responsible, and how's that going, so you can keep a track of your response. So it's not, as I said earlier, it's not the solution to pandemic planning, but it is a solution, and I found that to be a really good guide, that it actually pretty clearly mapped out different phases, what are the type of challenges you'll face at different phases, and who will be responsible for addressing it and how it will be done. So that's there for to jog your memory. to have a look through and compare your plan to, or really as a basis, I think, for developing a plan for those that mightn't have a plan in place yet. But it, yeah, it was a really good guide. So again, thanks to the team for sharing that. Is there anything that people, I'm just mindful of the time, is there anything that people would like to go through or any comments? Hopefully you've had a chance to have a brief look at that this morning. Have we got any comments, anything that people would like to talk about? We're certainly happy to, if people are developing a plan from the start using this as a basis, I'm sure that the Solomon Water team would be happy to have a talk about how they've gone about it, and we're certainly available as well to give people a bit of guidance on it. Are there any other comments on the completion of a pandemic plan and some of the risk elements that have come up there? So, Scraven, is there anything from the Solomon Water team that you'd really like to draw our attention to based on your plan?
I think the key thing is it's not a straightforward process. As we sat down and workshop through our process, it made us had a clear, good look again at our current business continuity plans, and there was some key learnings taken from there as well that came in as new learning to be added into our business continuity planning. So yes, it is as Royal has said, it is a continuous learning journey. And I think if we, yes, we can have a plan, but the need to still open our eyes and be adaptable to the new challenges and to the growth, new changes in the country or the marketplace is very, very important as well. So that helps us sort of being realistic with the plan, keeping it alive, you know. If anything, that's the only thing I can, as I think I can say for now, in terms of our key learning as well.
Thanks, Scraven. So it was really interesting and to go through this plan, and it does reflect a lot of the key elements that we think back to the, so what we're talking about there at the Sendai framework. You can see how that's flowed through to a plan like this, which does bring it to life in a lot of detail. And as Scraven said, it's really a collaborative process. So you can't take this away and think, oh, great, I've got a continuity plan now or a pandemic response plan. If you're going to try and use this, you really do need to get your team together, workshop what the different trigger levels are. What are the things that could impact on your business at these levels? How will you respond and who's going to do that? And importantly, go away then and communicate this with people, practice it exactly how you put this into place, and do the upfront thing. So while the pressure's not on, so go back and just say, have we got all these things in place? How do we tackle it? Have we got the resources we need, the people? Have we got the materials, the spare parts, the chemicals, and all of those things that we'll need? And use this as a bit of a guide, but certainly it does need to be workshopped and made specific to your utility if you're going to use that as a template. So I'll just stop sharing that, and we're almost done, and I know we're a little bit over.
I think Carmine from Nauru raised a good point.
Oh, Carmine's with us, so great.
Hi, Carmine. Maybe you can just jump in and share your point, Carmine, and maybe a little bit about how in Nauru are you part of the task force, and is that helpful for raising these sorts of issues? And ultimately, what do you see as the
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you, Dean. Just a little bit of background first, because Nauru is a single island, very small island, 27 square kilometres, has about 11,000 people. So we've started developing a plan based on the task force criteria for stage 1 to stage 4 alerts. But as we went through the planning process, and we've used our staff to do this, we've been engaging with all our staff in relation to developing the plan. stage one for Nauru is capture and contain. So basically, there's no cases of COVID in Nauru at the moment. There hasn't been any even in quarantine. So we've sort of kept it at bay.
Where come on? Come on, might have dropped out.
I think you dropped out, but I think it's interesting to hear how they're doing it in-house. And also seems like they're part of the country's COVID-19 task force as well.
Yeah, so yeah, Carmine's very, really generous with his time and his plan as well. So yeah, Carmine told me that once the plan's finalised and adopted, he's certainly happy to go through it in detail. So we might take him up on that offer. And Andre, I'm not sure if Andre managed to join us either from UA. We have trouble catching up with Andre, but you there, Andre? No, we can't get Andre either. Yeah, but Andre was really generous with his time as well. So unfortunately, we can't get him to talk about the situation in UA, about how they're implementing their plan. We'll see if we can get Carmine back. If Carmine comes back, he can certainly jump in, but just in conclusion, I'd really like to thank the PWWA, ADB, and all the utilities that have helped today by sharing their plans and having to talk about their situation. It's always a great learning. And as I said, I've been doing this for a long time, but I certainly learn a lot by looking at people's plans and the discussion. So I think there's a lot we can learn from each other. The wealth of knowledge and expertise in the 24 water utilities that I think that we've been talking to in the 14 countries under this program, but endless amounts of knowledge and experience there and learnings. People have done this stuff before. There's plenty of knowledge to draw on there. So thanks to everyone that's shared that today. I suppose my closing thoughts are that a pandemic plan is something that can be prepared by your team. As Gavin said, it's a team approach, and if you work through the key elements of this plan as a team, make it specific to your situation. We've given you that template as a bit of a guide if you haven't started on that journey yet, but it's certainly something that any of the teams have got the capability to do, and there's plenty of support you can draw on from your peers here, and reach out to us if you need a hand. But we'd encourage you to get in there, and we've given you a guide there that I think would be really helpful. And again, pandemic's only one of the emergencies that we need to plan for in a utility. So it's great to hear that, again, it's come across as a theme today that the pandemic plan is one of those things. So we prepare for a whole range of emergencies and business-threatening events in utilities. So whether it's water problems, floods, cyclones, all these sort of things that we have to prepare for to make sure we can supply services to our customers. Pandemic's just another one of those things. It's a little bit different. We'll have a pandemic plan now on our shelves and as part of our repertoire, but there'll be something else that comes along. So we need to be looking forward, looking ahead, and making sure that we've got a live set of plans that we practice, rehearse, and put into place. Because we need to have good plans that are regularly maintained and regularly practiced to be successful in doing all of those things. So that's probably my closing thought on what we've seen today. So again, we're happy to talk about these things in a lot more detail. And if people have found this of benefit today, we've got a range of other things that have come out of our discussions now that we've been having across the Pacific, and certainly happy to run a series of workshops on some of these key things that may be important to providing service in the COVID environment, but also building up capacity. So the non-revenue water safety plans, asset management, providing water to settlement areas where we can share our experiences. So we're happy to run these workshops over the next few months if people are interested. So please let us know. You got anything you'd like to add, Vivian?
No, just to thank everyone for a good discussion and active discussion on the chat as well. And thank you, Dean, for very good facilitation. Maybe I'd just hand over to my director, Jingmin Huang, to say a few things in closing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you, Dean. And also many thanks to the colleagues from PWWA. Thank you for providing such a wonderful platform for us to share and discuss. And hi, colleagues from Solomon Water, Kamong from Nauru, colleagues from RMI, Ibai, Samoa, Niue, James from Kiribati, and Uniello from Vanuatu, Port Vila, and Yap from FSM, and Barry from Fiji. Thank you so much for joining us and also sharing your experience. Thank you, Dean, for very good moderation, and also many thanks to Manila Water as our very honored guest speaker. And as we all know, ADB is a Pacific countries development partner. During this pandemic time, it is so essential to listen to you from the ground. It pays to be propelled, and you are such a key stakeholder in your country's COVID preparation and response. So could I suggest that rather than waiting for some external help, please could you start to develop your simple workable plan in-house, including the water safety plan and also the business continuity plan. And I'm so encouraged to see that some water utilities in our region have done some solid plans to start with, such as Solomon Water. And thank you so much for your openness in sharing it with us today. The ADB team, including Dean and others, will be happy to review and also give you feedback on your plans as you develop or to refine it. And then based on that, we also plan to have a webinar program with high quality sessions on water supply and operation, and including the sanitation over the next year, including all these different topics. So let's continue learning and sharing together. Today's session is just the beginning of many, many sessions. So I would stop here. Please stay safe and have a nice morning, afternoon, and evening. So I hand it back to Vivian. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving as well. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Happy to catch up anytime, team. Bye.
Bye, Don. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.